As time will tell what our master's wishes are. But for now, you are free to go. You'll find there are many ways out of this aquarium, but I find it more interesting for you to decide which you take.
Thomas runs his hand along the wall again, the knife still twiddling between his fingers. Thomas looks and sees exits.
Yeah, you see out from that central tank, pipes leading out to the 4 smaller tanks, which are still relatively large, and each smaller tank has behind it a gap in these stone walls, these tunnels now that lead out to who only knows where. I'll give you a choice. You can either give me a spot hidden or a listen roll. And also with the knife, if you're taking it just casually and within sight, absolutely fine. You have this surgical knife, this scalpel in your hands. If you are, on the other hand, attempting to take it without Jenkins being aware that you're taking it, I'd like you to give me a sleight of hand roll as well, please.
I think we're absolutely trying to see whether we can just slip it into a pocket. So I will give you that sleight of hand first. This might not be good because I've only got 10 in sleight of hand. That's a 95 over 10.
Okay.
Could I not push it with a dexterity roll?
Yeah, okay. But obviously, if it is a fail, then the pushed failure, is even that more significant.
Oh, absolutely. But, of course, I have an extra 15 to my dexterity from the jelly. Let's give it a go. So I think Thomas tries to sleight of hand it, but can't quite manage to get it into the pocket, so continues twiddling with a 21 under 65.
Okay, then there's that moment where you feel like you might drop it, but these new speed-enhanced reactions almost correct it before something goes wrong, and you do in that moment just twist it, turn it, and it's rather than your pocket, which you attempted to, it's just slid nicely up your sleeve. Easy to hand, hidden from Jenkins. But you have this surgeon's knife now, hidden upon your person. Were you attempting to see what was going on in the rest of this aquarium, this void, or were you attempting to hear, leading out to the tunnels?
I think let's see what's going on. And that is a 66 over 50 for my spot hidden.
Oh, dear. Unfortunately, what you see in the tanks is irresistible. You've seen the red gelatinous egg holding some silhouette-like sleeping creature. But as you look to your left, in the west tank, you see 3 floating silhouettes. And you see they're floating because beneath each one, you see a tail slowly swaying, keeping them relatively buoyant in the water. But it's the yellow eyes bearing down on you. But they're perfectly still, almost just floating in the water, maintaining a sense of stillness. You realize they've been watching you the whole time. And as you look, you see each one has its skin upon its head pulled back, the scales pulled down, pinned to the sides of the head just behind the eyes, the skull sawn open, and each one has a series of metal rods driven into their brain. They look from you towards the central tank. Oh, but unfortunately, with your fail, you see that they're looking beyond the central tank, Thomas. They're looking towards the eastern tank. Now, what's unusual about the eastern tank for you, Thomas, is initially it looks empty. There's nothing there. There's just the rocks, in the same as the others, in the same way that each of the tanks has this bizarre recreation of the seabed floor, sand, rocks, and a few plants, and no, there's like an oil, a large mass of oil. Now, it's a good job you're still riding significant sanity failures, that you are still in a place where sanity is not within grasp. But I'm afraid there is going to be a roll for this one, Thomas. I'm going to ask you for the roll first, just as it begins to make sense. Could you give me a 1d6? And after your rest, we're not in a position to pass your indefinite insanity just yet. Unless we do.
A 5.
Ooh, okay. This is going to be great. So, what's going to happen is I'm going to describe what you see, and then I'm going to ask you to roll me a 1d4. 1 being the northern tank, 2 being the eastern tank, 3 being the southern tank, and 4 being the western tank. And whichever one you roll is going to dictate which direction you run screaming in an immediate sense of fear from what you're about to see. So could you roll that for me now, please?
That is a 4. The western tank.
Excellent.
As far away as possible from the east.
You see this eastern tank, and as you're on the other side, so you're looking over these tubes that link these tanks together, chains in the way, and you're moving your head, almost just weaving slightly to get your sight as you see this black oily mess, this almost kind of growth on the bottom of the tank. Oh, Thomas. It's when an eye opens on this black oily mess and it begins to raise somewhat within the tank, and then another eye opens, and another, and another, and another, and another, and this black twisting oily mess of these bubbles and bobbles and little tendrils all reaching and moving about, that you see that this is not an inanimate object, this is not some natural causation, that this is a living monstrosity. And you turn, and you panic. You bang into the side of the southern tank as you'd crept forward to see, and in there something bangs back and slams into the side, the scratches on the glass, the scratches and scratches and scratches. In there, it appears one of those bizarre scaled creatures is trapped, but has yet to have its skin pulled back, its skull sawn open, and its brain tampered with. But it's trapped. It makes you jump. It makes you fall back. You fall back towards the western tank. The 3 others that you saw before float gently, all watching you with their yellow eyes. You turn. You begin running out through the tunnel. But as you do, there was one last tank, Thomas. I'm going to give you just a tiny weeny bit of autonomy here, because I feel like in this moment of fear, in this moment of insanity, even though it's oh my God, that creature, that oily, bubbly, 100-eyed, fleshy, disgusting, pulpy thing was moving within its tank. They are in tanks. They're not directly in the room with you. There is a northern tank. Do you think Thomas would have tried to have seen it on his way out?
I don't think Thomas would have tried to have seen it, but I think turning upwards towards the east, he probably couldn't have helped but glimpse what might be lying inside.
So, okay, why don't we turn this on its head then? Why don't we have a spot hidden roll, and if you fail it, you accidentally see what's in the tank.
Fantastic. Well, I've got 50 on spot hidden, so it is odds even. Well, that is a 43, lucky Thomas.
Oh, then you do not see what's in that northern tank, but you do begin running down this tunnel. And again, it's so unusual that this underground room, this cavern, is almost created with an architectural design to it. These tunnels are perfect cylinders, not as if natural, there's something has created this in the way it is. But this tunnel, you're running down and you're running down and you're running down. You can hear the wet mud beneath your feet slapping and sloshing, the odd drip. The light begins to get darker. But you, with your eyes at the moment, you can see clearly. You can see much more clearly. And Thomas, before you, the tunnel comes to an end as it drops, and there is a pool of water. Your exit seems to lead to a pool of water.
With everything that is behind Thomas, and the heightened sense of well, everything, prowess that comes from the jelly. I think in a panic, Thomas is going to dive into the water. Not even going to stop to take his shoes and stockings off. He'll just dive straight in to escape.
Excellent. So Thomas dives into the water. Now, I'm going to ask for a series of rolls. Firstly, being swim with your new added red gelatinous flesh, hopefully powering some of that.
That is a 45 over 40, but I will spend 5 points of luck to make that a success.
Okay. So with a standard success, you are diving into the water. You are swimming, and this is some significant physical exertion. You can see that the tunnel doesn't change in shape. It continues in this tube-like smooth shape, but this just happens to be underwater. You're swimming as hard as you can. You've been under for a while. Nearly a minute passes. Can you give me a constitution roll, please, Thomas?
That is a 74 over 65.
Oh, dear. Your lungs tighten. You feel this pain begin in your head, and you are powering, pushing, almost clawing at the water and then pushing it behind you. And you are moving a lot faster than you've ever moved through water. Another minute passes, Thomas. You are quite far through this tunnel. Could you give me another constitution roll, please?
That is a 15 under 65.
Okay.
Which is a hard success.
You feel in this moment there's almost the pain in your lungs and your head. It stays, but it stabilizes. It's something that you can hold with this new strength, this new desire to enjoy this power and get to the other end of this tunnel of water. You feel that you, with your sheer willpower, can maintain this breath and this pain in your head. You continue pushing, gliding through this water faster than you've ever moved, pushing through. And on this last minute, you see light, a flickering of light. The tunnel seems to pull up, and you can see that there is a top to the water. And just as you reach the top of the water, I'd like you to give me a third constitution roll, please, Thomas.
Here we go. That is a 21 under 65, which again is a hard success.
You burst through the top of the water, almost leaping at the top of the water like a salmon might up a waterfall, and you land splatting onto the ground into the wet mud. And you find yourself lying there, the pain in your lungs beginning to lessen. The pain in your head, sharp. You look around, and you realize you're lying on the bank of a lake. Not the Prideaux lake, but not dissimilar, almost very similar. But you look around, and you look across the fields, and you look and you see a manor house. A manor house that you have not yet been to, Thomas. And in that last moment, as you look at the manor house, you look back at the water, and a bubble rises from the water. And due to your constitution rolls, Thomas, you have a wash of your cold, red, gelatinous flesh rushing through your veins, peaking in your head, this sharp needle of pain. And Thomas, you faint, leaving yourself in the open and incredibly vulnerable at the edge of somebody else's lake. Reverend George, Miss Anastasia Prideaux, Mr. Christopher Burrows, you find yourselves with none other than Lady Clara Hawthorne and her son, Tobias Hawthorne, standing in the entryway close to the assembly room of the Kingscombe Spa. You've just been directed, ladies, off to the left through this door into the ladies' bath. Gentlemen, off to the right through this door into the gentlemen' baths by Kinnersley, who seems to be the leading figurehead of the staff here at the Kingscombe Spa. What is it that you do?
The Reverend will just, before Miss Anastasia disappears, will come in and uncharacteristically fuss. Well, do be careful. You know, mind yourself. You know, don't get any in your ears. Remember how your mother used to like that. And hopefully Anastasia will be going, what is Uncle doing? And then he goes, and do make sure you tie your hair back. And he's going to very nonchalantly lean in and say, don't drink any of the water. But yes.
Oh, so what's that? What role is that then? Is that...
Oh gosh, he can't make a roll. He's a reverend. He doesn't stealth or
Anastasia, I would say one thing that flags up that is unusual to you is you were very young when your mother passed away. You hardly remember her. I mean, she was beautiful. And you have a lot of her qualities, but you don't remember her as such. So when the Reverend says, like your mother used to say, you're very aware that this isn't a real memory. I would even argue without a role, because it's the intention and because of the language used, that you would be aware that the Reverend is attempting to use some code.
I think Anastasia is far more paranoid than her uncle has been up to now. And for her, what this signals is, oh, I see, finally he's catching along that everyone's trying to kill us. That's all right. Well, better late than never. And she's gonna nod at him. I'm glad he's not going to also contribute to us dying.
The Reverend, almost slightly in a buffoon way, jolly good, and overly nods. And there's probably a moment where Anastasia's just nodding at this idiot, nodding back at her.
We're just nodding at each other.
Before the Reverend wanders off into like the steam room or whatever,
So was there a role there, Reverend? Was there something you were trying to communicate that you leaned in and whispered? I'm just curious just to see whether anybody around you would have been able to, I suppose, decipher this rather highbrow code that you've come up with.
As I say, it's body language, psychology, perhaps.
Well, that might be to interpret. Go on, give us a stealth roll.
Yes, stealth roll. Gosh, I'm not even sure it's on the sheet, is it? Okay, there we go. Yes. Oh, that's a failure. 26 versus 20. We're midway through season 2, and he hasn't spent much of that luck.
I was just about to say, I'm not one to put ideas in people's minds, but...
Yeah, he's going to luck that down to a success for the stealth.
Okay,
Yeah,
so a success there with some luck.
Yeah.
Okay, then, Reverend, talk us through that then. So you know, you're going to get to communicate here without Lady Hawthorne, without Tobias, without Burrows, without your new best friend, Kinnersley, our wonderful yellow-coated Kingscombe Spa official staff member.
Peacock.
Listening to this moment. This is a private moment that you're able to have. What do you say?
He probably has to make it quick, so he will try and keep it as simple and say, don't drink the water. There is more to these miracles than they are letting on. Hopefully that communicates that the old codger isn't... Well, he's not that old, actually, but old Uncle George. Yes, he's old at heart.
I think Anastasia will process that and act upon that accordingly in her own specific way. But at this point, Kinnersley gives a very significant bow to Lady Hawthorne and Miss Anastasia and says, please, the waters wait. If you'd like to go through and tell the attendees whether you intend to bathe in the natural spring or if you would prefer the hot water for the spa, please, enjoy.
Of course, Kinnersley. When do I not enjoy the waters here?
Well, it's a privilege to have you bringing the Prideaux family here, Lady Hawthorne. We are very excited. We very much hope that when you go through your healing, transformative experience, you come through on the other end and you enjoy it as much as everybody else that's come through these doors has. Gentlemen, please, I don't wish to hold you back. Reverend, if you'd like to follow through this door, and Mr. Burrows, please, at the invitation of the good Reverend. And I would say, Mr. Burrows, this is quite an exceptional opportunity.
I am delighted, I'm sure.
Oh, you will be, Mr. Burrows. You will be. And he essentially steps back and watches you go off into your different sections. Can I ask then, Lady Hawthorne and Miss Anastasia, how do you decide between you whether you're going into the natural kind of cool bath spring, the natural waters, or whether, I mean, the spa itself, sorry, the steam room itself is still natural waters. It's just in a very different way. So what is it that you would like to do? And feel free to have the conversation between yourselves in character.
Now then, my dear, I don't know how much experience you have with visiting spas such as ours, but may I recommend the steam room first, followed by the natural waters. It does wonders for the skin.
Yes, I think Anastasia is not very excited about spending this entire one-on-one time with Lady Hawthorne, necessarily. It seems like a lot of work socially. She knows that she's probably going to say something wrong and get judged again. I think she is going to try and spend as much time in the changing rooms as she can. She's going to agree with like, oh, what a wonderful plan. And then just like, oh, I'm afraid I will need some more time here. Something has been caught on something on my dress or something.
Oh, heavens, my dear, don't worry about that. Girl, please see to Miss Prideaux. We can't have her delay her visit to the spa any longer than necessary. I'm quite keen to get back into the waters myself. My hip has been slightly achy with all the walking. I think I really do need to just let the waters work their magic.
And you hear the young lady just say, of course, Mum. And immediately someone is right next to you, Anastasia, helping with the dress.
Okay. Anastasia's just, she can only do what she can. She's going to make her work much harder by moving the dress in the opposite direction. Like, oh, do you mean like this or like this?
Mom, if you just raise your arms above your head, I'll have this done in a moment.
And I guess after a while they'll succeed, and she will defeatedly walk out in her whatever they were wearing at the time or not.
So
to go into the spa.
She would have provided a bathing suit, and it's a rather modest bathing suit, but it is something that is slightly more suitable. So even though it is a bathing suit, it is nowhere near today's standards, and it would have been covering the majority of your body. It's suitable for your spa and bathing purposes. The gentleman would have had something not too dissimilar, actually. So you are headed, just remind me, Lady Hawthorne, are you headed to the steam room first to warm up and then jump into the natural waters, or is it straight to the natural waters?
Oh, steam room first and then the natural waters. Far better for the skin and the circulation.
So when you have that moment, you find yourselves going into the steam room. There's a door, a glass door that opens, and you find yourselves in the steam room. It's empty. There's no one there. It's just the two of you. And there are tiled the seats at the other side, and you're able to make your way in. The steam is thick. The steam is almost in a comforting way, like a warm blanket. It washes over you as you walk in. But it doesn't take long, Anastasia, before this warm blanket is quite consuming. Anastasia and Lady Hawthorne, I'm going to ask you both for a constitution roll as we jump over to the gentleman's bath. So could you make those rolls for me and I'd come back, please? Reverend, Mr. Burrows, you are escorted like the ladies, but into the gentleman's quarters, the baths of the Kingscombe Spa. And the question is proposed to you. Steam room, natural baths. What is it that you would do immediately in this situation? Bearing in mind that you have no chaperone. There are members dressed very much in the same way as Kinnersley. There are members dressed around, on hand to help. but they're keeping their distance. Part of the you can see here, part of the staff etiquette is to maintain a distance, to provide that social privacy, because this is a place where people come. You might even recognize Burrows and possibly the Reverend, that, well, most definitely the Reverend, that almost like a gentleman's club, there is the expectation that conversations will happen here that are private, and this is a space. It's part of the charm. It's part of the pull. People can come here and have those conversations with other members of the ton, perhaps, where they feel like they need to be kept a certain way. Or maybe, if they're lucky, a couple of members of industry might be able to come in on an off hour and have a conversation privately as they experience the spa for themselves. But you two are able to decide for yourselves. The steam room or the natural baths.
Well, Burrows definitely defers to the Reverend. This is the first time he's been within a place of such grandeur.
The Reverend is reluctant. He will probably have got the instructions from the staff that it is steam, water, etc., etc. And he is a little torn because he wants to jump to the last one, but equally, he actually wants to spend a little time with Burrows. And if Burrows actually looks excited at going into such a spa as this, then
he does.
He shall indulge this chap who has been of great service to the family in almost like a little, come on, Burrows, let's give it a go, shall we? And enter the steam room and be glad if nobody is in the steam room that can eavesdrop.
Can I ask you both for a quick spot hidden, please? I mean, you saw the ladies off, and it was quite right that the ladies were able to enter their side of the Kingscombe Spa before you disappeared. But I'd quite like you just to let me know, just before you disappear into your areas, what it is that you may or may not be able to see.
Very little, I fear. That's a 70/40 failure.
Ooh,
yes,
dear.
The Reverend is going better. 79 versus 36 failure. So we're seeing lots of steam.
Right. Well, just before you see lots of steam, and perhaps the steam is starting to seep out, even though you're not quite through. Still in the hallway here, just from the assembly room, before you go into the actual gentleman's spa itself, you hear a bit of a tumble almost at the door to the Kingscombe Spa. You're walking through, so this is almost like a glance as you step through into the actual changing rooms. But just as you do, you hear this almost tumble. You see an individual almost kind of drop something to the ground and then look up embarrassed and look around, and you hear someone going. You hear the voice. You hear someone saying, "Oh, Peter!" And Reverend, neither you or Mr. Burrows see what's going on here. You failed your role. You don't see what's going on here. You don't see what was fumbled. Something was dropped. You don't see what that is. But you see the gentleman. Reverend, you've seen this gentleman. You've seen this gentleman today, this morning, at the heart of the Sea Chapel.
Was he one of the congregation?
No. Peter was the individual that the Reverend ran out, saying that he needed to see. The Reverend, after calming you in his quarters with Miss Lambert, ran out to, I think he'd seen through his window, he ran out to speak to, well, I don't think there's a nicer way to put it, the gravedigger.
Oh, good. There we go. The Reverend, naturally hearing a commotion, will just say, as I say, is everything all right? Has somebody slipped over on the wet porcelain?
Kinnersley slips in like an automated response.
Oh, goodness
just
me.
Steps in and absolutely gives you a momentary shock. Everything's fine, Reverend Prideaux. Huge apologies. I will have this sorted momentarily. I insist. Please, make your way into the spa and I'll make sure that whatever kerfuffle's going on here is dealt with. And again, I apologize that this has sullied your experience. In fact, I'll have drinks brought from the assembly room right down to you. Please, please go make yourself comfortable, and I will have, Francis, I'll have Francis bring you those drinks immediately, please. And he gestures.
thank you very much. And he ushers Burrows through into the steam room.
Now, you two have a moment where you have your privacy, but at the same time you're able to talk, but at the same time there are staff there before you enter into the steam room. Is there anything, even with the staff being there, that you say, or is it more of a we'll wait until we're alone to actually talk?
The Reverend is buoyed up by his secret communication with Miss Anastasia. And so he's going to just pause and say, well, I say, Mr. Burrows, isn't this a grand occasion to come into such a fine establishment?
Oh, goodness, yes, sir. Quite an opportunity for a man such as myself.
And I haven't had the opportunity to say thank you for your service to the family. And he'll take Mr. Burrows by the hand and begin to shake his hand. It was a pleasure, and he'll shake his hand when he says, it was a pleasure coming down in the carriage with you. And then he'll stop shaking his hand. And when we saw that horse in that field, that was rather comical. And when we turned up at Prideaux Manor, and he'll shake his hand when he's saying things that have happened, and will stop shaking his hand when he is saying things that are not quite true. And he'll sort of like, wouldn't you agree? And he'll kind of, hopefully, Burrows will understand this.
I like this code. I like this very much. Burrows looks at him wide-eyed for a moment when he starts whispering about horses, but I think with the repeated significant shaking, he'll sort of start nodding along, and then say, and you've reminded me, sir, I did not wish to trouble you with it earlier, and of course not interrupt the game and the promenade and so on, but some mail did arrive earlier, and he'll shake the hand emphatically as he says so. It's just tucked into my pocket just there. A couple of letters. Please, later I shall pass them on to you.
Oh, that's very kind of you. And he'll shake his hand, and then he'll stop shaking his hand, saying, "Wasn't it funny seeing that fish skull on the beach?" Gave Miss Charlotte quite a fright, and he will shake his hand.
Burrows' eyes widen again for a moment, and then he just smiles and says, goodness, yes, well, of course, I mean, natural to be surprised, but I did take a look at it, and it was nothing unusual, sir. And he shakes his hand vigorously as he says so.
He's a little confused.
You get the sense for a moment, as you're both very cleverly speaking in these lovely coded manners, but seem to have the longest handshake known to mankind. You get the sense that you're being watched.
Never seen two men shake hands for 20 minutes before?
Exactly.
Yeah, are you vying for a reputation roll here? Is that what's going on? If we shake hands long enough, someone's going to boost our reputation.
When the Reverend feels this, he would just, well, that is good. We wouldn't want anything dangerous, because it's such a lovely, peaceful place here. But
as soon as you stop shaking hands, out of the corners of your eye, you see that the two gentlemen serving staff that are at the entrances to the change rooms here, you see that it's almost a movement that you never noticed that they got to that position, but they almost look like they were arched over, leaning and listening and watching. And then as soon as you say that and you stop shaking hands, you see their figures whip up back into this straight, expected stance, this quite rigid stance of the staff here at the Kingscombe Spa.
He'll give Burrows a good slap on the back and say, and thank you so much for keeping an eye on young Anastasia. I know she can be a bit of a handful, but, I do wonder if she actually knows that the Reverend, well, I'm actually quite envious of her young, free spirit to be able to do whatever she fancies doing. You know, I really hope she knows that.
As you say that, Tobias walks in. Oh, is she rather free-natured? Is she?
I beg your pardon, young man.
How dare you, sir?
Apologies, Reverend. You said that you wish that you had the ability like her to do what she wishes.
Well, she's young, free, and single, young sir. I am a man of the cloth. I do not have such a luxuries as these youngsters to do flights of fancy. And he'll...
It was quite surprising. His appearance was quite surprising. So if there's a momentary fluster, it's fully expected.
He will fluster, but she's not like Miss Charlotte. She's not exactly going to run off to France and marry a poet.
No, I hope not.
But anyway, come in to us. You're rather good on the piano. My wife plays the organ back at my church. Have you been playing the piano long?
Yes. Please come on through. But let's chat. And as he ushers you through into the steam room, we'll jump back over to the ladies. What was those constitution rolls we had going on there, please? Lady Hawthorne.
Ah, well, Lady Hawthorne is a tough old bird, and obviously she's been in the spa before, so she's used to this sort of thing. So that was an extreme success, 13 versus 75.
I would expect nothing less, Lady Hawthorne. And Anastasia.
That is a hard success, so 14 over 45.
Okay.
But I don't know if she's feeling that well anyway.
Okay, no, well, so you go into this, essentially, you go into this large tiled room. You can see that there are, against the back wall, you can see that there are these benches that are fixed, and they begin to kind of wrap around slightly. There's ample seating area, but you can also see that there are some grates in the floor. And it's from these grates that the steam is rising. You can see that that's where the hot spring is coming from. That's where some of the hot water is coming from. That's where it's this natural water is then turned into this hot mist before you, that you walk into the room and that you enjoy. You begin to breathe in. You begin to embrace this heat. And you do it well. Lady Hawthorne's an old pro at this. This is a Sunday afternoon for Lady Hawthorne. But Anastasia, your, should we say, presentation of yourself in this moment, where some might have a rush to the head, they might feel a momentary dizziness, they might feel a sharp breath intake, you conduct yourself very well. Lady Hawthorne recognizes that. It's almost like this is second nature. I suppose you are a Prideaux. But you find yourselves in the room, and as you come in, you feel like one of the members of staff have, to give you the best experience, you see that there is a new plume of steam that rises into the room and really thickens the air. But you have an opportunity to sit, and you have an opportunity to chat. You also have an opportunity to give me a spot hidden.
Let's do that. Nope. That's 88 over 49.
Excellent. Lady Hawthorne, you're also very welcome to give us a spot hidden.
Oh, right. Yeah. But I do hope they're keeping my spa nice and clean. I'd be most displeased if they're not. Oh no, obviously her hip is troubling her slightly, so she's far too distracted and is more focused on sitting down and just enjoying the warmth.
Okay. So, as you're sitting there, the steam rises, it blurs a bit of vision. You, Anastasia, how close to Lady Hawthorne do you sit?
I guess close enough that she can talk to me if she wants, but no closer than that.
So you're doing that really kind of just socially accepted thing of kind of sitting on your own, but also kind of just being in distance that if a conversation started, you might feel obliged to join in.
But also, I think Anastasia at this point would probably, despite her best instincts, have a lot of questions arising about Tobias that she might consider asking, but also she's quite scared of Lady Hawthorne. So she's kind of sitting there being like, What is the best thing to do now? I'm just going to stare until something happens to me. Just stare ahead.
Well, Lady Hawthorne, we'll leave that up to you.
Well, for a few moments, you can see that Lady Hawthorne is just relaxing, enjoying the heat, sighs most contentedly, and then she turns and looks at you and smiles. I said, well, so my dear, how are you enjoying your visit to Kingscombe so far?
It is truly the experience of a lifetime.
Oh, wonderful. We do hope that our visitors do have a most exceptional time here, both in the town and in the spa. And of course, if you're to make your home here, we really want you to feel welcome and a part of the community. I mean, if there's anything that you'd like to know, please feel free to ask me. Obviously, I hope you won't mind me taking it upon myself to guide you in some of the intricacies of Kingscombe society. As a Prideaux, as one of the predominant families in the town, of course, you must be seen to be making the right connections and the right decisions.
I don't always seem to do exactly what society expects of me. You might have already seen yourself.
Well, you're young, my dear. You're young. I'm sure we can encourage that behaviour to take a back seat, shall we say?
Can you both give me a listen roll, please?
You hear the handshake from across the spa. That's 20-minute handshake.
Thundering.
Oh, not for me.
Well, that was a success, 62 out of 70.
I rolled a 44 over 40, so 4 off.
I'm assuming you're not interested in using any luck points there?
Fine, I'll do it.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, it's going to be for no reason.
Turns
that's
out
okay.
coercion is real. I like it.
It is. Yeah, I've been peer pressured.
You hear gratuitous handshaking.
Okay. You hear a handshake. No. You, the both of you are, well, you're having your conversation, and you're talking about a number of different aspects of society. But I think what's telling is that when you talk, you are in a secluded environment. You can hear the hot steam coming through, but this is a lovely private moment. With your use of luck, Anastasia, and Lady Hawthorne, with your success, what you hear is a scratching noise. But it's not just scratching, it's almost as if something is grating on the tiles in the room, somewhere central to the room, like something is being pulled or dragged or lifted in the room you are in.
I do find this place so peaceful and relaxing. How are you finding it, my dear?
Do you hear something? I can hear something in this room.
Oh, I can hear
Hello?
the steam. I can hear the steam. You can hear something else?
Yeah, like a scratching or a dragging of some sort. Is anyone else here?
Nobody answers. But what you hear next is almost like a gentle slap onto the tile, and then a second, and then a third, and then you hear the grating return, as if that something is being pushed, lifted, or moved across those tiles, and then finally you hear a silence. Anastasia, you hear, with that sense, there is something in the room with you and Lady Hawthorne.
Please excuse me, I am not feeling too well. I'm going to briefly return to the changing room. She gets up and starts making her way out of the room.
Can you give me a spot hidden?
Oh, I will. And I will fail once again. 69 over 49.
Anastasia, you're wearing this bathing suit, and as you say you're not feeling well and you go to move from the room, you step up, you walk a few steps across the tiles. Your toe, your littlest toe on your left foot bumps into something that wasn't there before, a grate perhaps, something that seems to have been moved and placed there, and you bump into it. And as you then take a step to the side, you bump into a figure. At first, this dull silhouette in the steam, but it stands before you, and then it turns to look at you, and as it breathes, the steam in front of its face and yours disappears, and you find that you are face to face with this sharp-toothed creature with a soft, flat face, and its eye on the side of its head as it turns its head up to an inch from yours and blinks. Anastasia, with this failed roll, you didn't see where it was. You weren't able to navigate it, but in this close proximity, not only do you see this creature is standing before you, and it is not a person, you see that this creature is not human. This creature is covered in scales, but the most horrifying aspect of this creature, beyond its form, is that half of its skull and face has been opened and is pulled down, hanging over one side, and its brain is exposed. Some skull has been removed, and there are some thin, long metal rods pressed into its brain. At that moment, it leans in that last inch, and as its face slides against yours, it smells. Its eye, millimeters away from yours, blinks, and as it does, you hear the eyelid shutting and closing, but you see that it moves sideways as opposed to horizontally. It just slowly stands up, moves away from your immediate face, and it turns, and it walks out through the door that you used to come into the spa with, and you hear the wet slap of its feet as it walks out into the corridor and the changing rooms of the Kingscombe Spa. Anastasia, you're going to need to make me a sanity roll, please.
That is a success. 41 over 62.
That is very lucky. That means you only need to make me a 1d4 plus 1, please.
Okay, only. Got it.
Only.
There's a total of 3.
So 3 points of sanity. Anastasia, I'm going to ask you in this moment, that experience where you felt like this preternatural, almost amphibian-like creature with scales, yellow eyes, and this sharp-toothed formation to its skull and its mouth stood before you. Skin peeled back from its head, skull cut open. You could see its brain. There were these rods in its brain. Anastasia, what do you do? How does this affect you?
It's quite a different sensory experience to be in the steam room. Everything is kind of, there's a pressure around you, and there's some kind of slowness in the way the world feels. So I think maybe briefly she feels like she's dreaming, because there is kind of an unnatural sense in her sensory experience. But that is still the most horrifying thing she's ever dreamt of. I think her first instinct is to try and wake up. So she will kind of slap herself a bit, try to wake up, and then instantly just run out.
Following?
But she does another place.
Run out following? It left through the door that you entered through. Is that where you go? There's only one door out of the steam room.
I mean, she's not staying in there, but she's not following. She's trying to get out.
I understand. So through the same door, but with the intention of getting away.
Yeah.
Okay. Gentlemen, I imagine by this point you are following Tobias. You've been in the steam room. Conversation has continued. Maybe the topic of conversation have been Anastasia. As that conversation is going on after finding out that Tobias has been playing the piano for most of his life. There's an instruction from his father. Feel free to dig deeper. But you find yourselves in the steam room.
All your life, you say. Forgive me, I'm not a very good judge of age. How old are you, good sir?
I'm 23 years old.
Good. And you say your father insisted you play the piano. Were you not a fan?
But it's something that he has all of his children do.
Does your sister Lily play the piano as well, then?
No, I think she wished she could, but unfortunately my sister is she's unable to. She wasn't very well not too long ago, and unfortunately this has left her in a bit of her physical demeanor is not what it once was. She's confined to her bed. It's a terrible, sad state. Lily used to love swimming, walks on the beach. It was her happiest place. But since the accident, shall we say, she's been confined to her room. It's been very difficult for her.
I'm very, very genuinely sorry to hear that, Master Tobias. I guess these miraculous waters in Kingscombe aren't for everyone.
Well, my father intends to bring her here, but he looks at you, Burrows. You've had dealings with Tobias before. But the Reverend is a bit of a new quantity for Tobias.
This is true.
Tobias just takes a moment and says, my father intends to bring my sister here, but it sounds bizarre, I'm sure, but Lily, she's helping my father with something at the moment, and I feel that they would both like to see that through before she's brought here.
Right, I see.
Of course, but most glad to hear that she still finds things to occupy her time. Her illness must be such a trial on your family, on yourself, your siblings. Forgive me, sir. I had not realized you had others besides Miss Lily herself.
No, well, not anymore. Unfortunately, it's just my sister and myself at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, I did not mean to pry.
No, not at all. Family is often a challenging endeavor that we all have to face and we all have to navigate. But we do so because it's the right thing to do. Family, protecting our family. Reverend, surely you can understand that this is an imperative, especially here in Kingscombe, that looking after the ones that we are related to is an absolute must, beyond all else.
Absolutely. You're a good man, Tobias, and yes, even though they don't wish it, both Anastasia and Master Thomas are very, very much my reason for being here, and I would do anything to protect them. In fact, and he kind of looks around. You might actually be able to help me. I fear your father, Lord Hawthorne, is being very, very polite, and perhaps might be covering up for Master Thomas's indiscretions. If we were to go to a less salubrious place to maybe find Master Thomas engaged in, I don't know, gambling or perhaps womanizing, where might we look, or at least where might you have heard rumored, as we are desperate to track down Master Thomas to make sure he's not getting up to too much mischief, that Lord Hawthorne in his good nature is clearly helping the young gentleman out.
Well, the only places I can think of, Reverend, I'm sure this is not the case. But there's, there's the ringside where sometimes there's some boxing for sport. It's called, it's the Prudent King. But I suppose the other place, not my father's club, Hawthorne House, but another, as you say, slight less reputable club, the Wincing Prawn. Yeah.
I much as I have to look after Miss Anastasia, I have to look after Master Thomas as well, and I'm indebted to Mr. Burrows here. He got caught up in family business, didn't you, Mr. Burrows? And I have been indebted to this gentleman
Quite so.
quite a bit. So I hope you two get along, because an old heart like me doesn't quite get the picture of absolutely everything. But I hope both of you know I'm a man of a cloth. By my very nature am trustworthy, and if there is anything you ever wish to say to me, either of you, it would be strictly between myself and God.
Burrows can't handle the moral quandary anymore. He's sort of been choking quietly to himself and just staring around into steamy corners, trying to make sure there's no staff nearby to overhear. And he finally looks down and almost whispers, on the subject of looking after the Prideaux, good Reverend, Master Tobias did vouchsafe earlier some disquieting information that he may care to repeat at this time concerning Miss Anastasia. I confess I am at a loss. I must advise, please.
As you disclose this, and there's the request for advice, I'm just going to check one thing. Anastasia, when you leave the steam room, where is it you go?
How intuitive is the layout of this place?
Relatively intuitive. There's the central corridor of which you came in, and immediately to your left is the large assembly room, which is almost not too dissimilar to a ballroom. And then you have to your right, that is where the offices would be. And then as you kind of extend down that main corridor, to your left were the ladies' change rooms leading to the steam room and the baths, and then exactly the same mirrored on the other side would have been, with the long corridor separating them down the middle with the wall down the middle as well, would have been the gentlemen's changing rooms, steam room and natural baths, and there would have been some washrooms and change rooms down the far end.
I think initially Anastasia wants to go and find her uncle and Tobias. But on her way there, she realized that she's caused a lot of trouble already, and this is probably a bad idea. Just going to go as close to the entrance to the main side of things as is appropriate to go, to, I guess, potentially see it if another terrifying creature passed by and try to get them, and then sit anywhere she could find. If there's a chair, great. If she has to sit on the floor, she will sit on the floor. And wait for them to come out in kind of quite a frozen state of paralysis and panic.
Okay, and did you say that you gather your things before you do this, or is it straight out there in your bathing suit?
That's a lot. I mean, the creature was going to the changing rooms, right?
It looked like the creature was making a path through the changing rooms to the Kingscombe Spa main corridor, so it had access to all rooms.
What is in the opposite direction to where the terrifying creature is going?
So you leave into your changing rooms where your personal possessions were, and then either stepping out into the corridor leading to all of the rooms, and there is this open corridor there, or
From your change rooms, there is a longer corridor leading all the way down to the washrooms at the far end, which you haven't been to yet.
Which of those two ways would involve me not crossing paths with a terrifying creature?
Probably down to the washrooms.
I guess I go there and try to find my way out from there then.
Okay. Can you give me a navigate roll, please? And as you do that, we're just going to cross over to the gentleman. Because, gentlemen, as you are in your steam room enjoying your restoratives, you will need to make me a listen roll.
That is a 44 versus 20 failure for the Reverend. He's good at talking, but not so good at listening.
Oh goodness, that's a 76 over 55, so Mr. Burrows also.
Well, the good news is that you don't hear anything. Let's roll for Tobias.
Lovely.
Oh good.
As we were saying.
We'd hate to be interrupted.
But
We're just talking about Anastasia's safety.
The lovely thing about not hearing anything is that you get to see something. Not hearing the door to the steam room open, the conversation flows. Talking to Tobias, talking to each other, talking about experiences, Burrows' confession almost. And as he says those words, you don't hear the door open. You feel a slight change in, shall we say, temperature? Slight whoosh of cooler air. But this is a disclosure from Burrows. This is not to be a moment of distraction. You don't hear the door closing. You don't hear the padding of feet on the floor. You don't hear this dragging sound pulling through the room. And it's very difficult to isolate to one location because of the steam in the room. But this is where I ask you for a spot hidden. And, no, I was about to offer a bonus die, but I think that's too generous.
I'm going to say, we're not hearing anything. It's full of steam. The Reverend is a failure, 55 versus 36. He's looking expectantly at Tobias.
And Tobias is looking expectantly at Burrows. Burrows
is apparently avoiding everyone else's gazes, so his darting eyes do spy something. That's a 25 under 40, normal success.
Oh dear, Burrows.
Oh no.
Oh dear, Burrows. Not only have you done this to yourself, but you've done it to the room. Burrows, you see that there is a silhouette moving backwards through the steam. This is a humanoid form, but you can see it moving backwards through the steam billowing out of its way as it moves, almost as if the steam is avoiding this creature. And as it does move backwards towards where you are, Burrows, you can see that this humanoid being is dragging something, not something, dragging someone. Burrows, the steam begins to dissipate around this creature. And that's what you see, a creature. You see this scaled monstrosity. The first thing you notice is that on the forearms and the elbows, as it drags this thing, there is some kind of spines sticking out, almost webbed between the spines. That the scales are of a dark greenish quality. And the reason you notice it is because as its head turns, it's this eye in the side of the head, this yellow eye that blinks sideways, that looks at you. Again, like those before you, you recognize that the skin across the top of the head has been severed and has been pulled open. The skull has been sawn and there is a piece of the skull missing, and you can see now as the steam in the room dissipates, as this thing gets closer, you can see its brain and these metal sticks, these pins sticking out of its head. It moves towards you, Reverend, and Tobias can't help but follow your terrified gaze. Burrows, tell us what it is in this moment that you look like.
For a split second, his mouth opens and shuts soundlessly, and then he sputters out, "Nothing unusual! Nothing unusual!" And then he starts splashing his way backwards very quickly.
Tobias almost pushes himself back against the wall. Reverend, what do you do?
The Reverend wonders what the commotion is and has a look.
And I think that is where both of you give me a sanity roll, please.
I'll roll
for Tobias.
That is a failure for the Reverend. 88 versus 58.
Burrows?
Oh dear, that's a 71 over 37.
I'm afraid, gentlemen, this is what we like to call a 1d6 plus 1.
Okay.
Tobias succeeded.
Tobias has seen this before. He's not fooling anyone.
Just throwing it out
He
there.
loves them.
He rolled a 22, so that's quite fantastic. 22 over 57. And he loses 1 point of sanity. Good old Tobias. I bloody like Tobias. Lovely lad. Okay, so Reverend George, what did you roll?
The dice are being very kind. That's a 1 plus the 1, so that's a loss of 2 sanity points.
Oh, very nice. Same as Tobias. Mr. Burrows.
Look at that, lucky us. I also rolled a 1, so that plus 1 is 2.
Okay, so quite well done dice, telling the same story. So the good news is that you all see and experience the same thing in the same way. But as this thing pulls forward, or rather is walking backwards, and you see its eye blink, you all jump yourselves to the wall. There's 2 things that you notice. One is that it holds this body in one arm, and the other arm reaches down, and as you see it reaches down, you can see that there is webbing between the fingers, and there are these claws extended, and its eyes are glazed. It's almost operating on this automatic basis. It's not reactive to the situation around it. It sees you, but it doesn't see you. One hand reaches down, and the grate on the floor is removed. This looks like a very heavy grate. This creature removes it seamlessly. You hear the scratching, and you hear it landing on the tiles, and the movement of this grate on the tiles. But then you see the creature moving into the hole, into this drain, and you see it pulling this body with it. Reverend, you've seen this body. Reverend, you blessed this body. This is Jane Christopher, who this very morning you laid your fingers upon her forehead and you saw something horrific, which ended with a vision of your nephew, Thomas. You see this scaled creature that clearly has gone through its own torturous endeavors descend into this drain, dragging Jane Christopher's body behind. And the last thing you see is the other hand reach up, grab the drain, pull it across, and slide it into place. And you hear it land. And you are left, the 3 of you, stunned in shock, stunned in silence, looking at this drain, all aware that every single one of you saw the same thing. There is no explaining this away. There is no pretending this didn't happen. Can you all give me an intelligence roll, please? Or when I say all, I mean the gentleman.
That is a failure from the Reverend. 86 versus 80.
That's a terrible failure from Burrows as well. That's a 94 over 75.
Well, the good news is you were attempting to fail this, to subdue some of the vision you've just seen. I'm going to allow you to choose a feature of the description that I've given to try and subdue. The reality that this happened, unfortunately, is there. It is a reality. The 3 of you saw this together, and we're not quite at the state where the 3 of you can explain this away, but there are horrific features about what you saw, whether it be the body, whether it be the brain, whether it be the metal prongs sticking out of the brain, or the yellow eye with the eyelid that blinks sideways, the razor-sharp teeth, the webbed hands, the slap of the sound of the foot on the ground as it moves through the steam room. But, gentlemen, I'll allow you to tell me one feature that you push into your subconscious.
Let me know if this counts as more than one feature keeper, but what I would like Mr. Burrows to suppress is the similarity between this creature and the skull he saw on the beach, which his lovely new employer assured him was nothing unusual.
That's more than fine. Very relative. Thank you, Burrows. Reverend?
The Reverend is almost the opposite of that. He is overloaded with everything he's trying to remember. He wants to see every single piece of this puzzle. Subconsciously, though, he pushes towards his subconscious the person he probably killed by blessing her this morning. And he tries to remember every single thing he can other than the fate of this poor innocent woman that the Reverend probably doomed.
And it's at that moment that the Reverend, Burrows, and elsewhere in the Kingscombe Spa, Anastasia, all three of you have the same thought at the exact same moment. This has been a transformative experience. Thank you for joining us for Cult and Culpability. Remember, you can find us at www.miskatonicplayhouse.com, and you can also visit the main stage for other scenarios from the Miskatonic Playhouse with links in the show notes below. Please like and subscribe, and if you can spare a minute to leave a review, it makes a huge difference to other like-minded listeners who will be able to find and enjoy our work. Until next time, when the curtain rises again.